I'm Chris Newton, creator of Feed, the Vampire Mythos RPG. In 10-Minute Mythos, I prove the endless possibilities of vampire role-playing by taking one random inspiration and using it to sketch out an original vampire mythos, all in 10 minutes. No prep, no script, just one gamer who loves a good vampire story. Wish me luck. Welcome to 10-Minute Mythos. What we're going to do this week is we're going to use a virtual Magic 8 Ball. Once again, I'm using springhole.net. So we're not going to do this with a theme exactly. Instead, there are all these questions that always have to be answered about these ideas. What the vampires, like whether they can go out in the sun and whether they're biologically alive and, is this set in the present and all this stuff. We're just going to use the 8 Ball to answer the questions. And then as we go, we're going to try to narrow it down into an idea that meets the criteria that we come up with randomly. So let us get started. And we'll have to hurry to get through these. My goal is to hit 20 questions. We'll see if we can manage that. First question.
Are they biologically alive?
Are they biologically alive? 8 Ball says it looks that way. Okay, well, we can interpret that multiple ways. Mm-hmm. Why don't we say that, yes, they appear to be biologically living beings, and perhaps they go through all the motions of life, like all their biological processes happen.
They have a metabolism.
But maybe it doesn't actually, like maybe they become dead if they don't feed or something like that. Like there's something they need to keep their bodies alive.
Yes, they will fade out. They have a blood-dependent, otherwise normal metabolism. Okay,
cool. Let's see.
Next. Can they tolerate the sun?
Can they tolerate the sun? Yep, it says they can. So far, they look pretty human, although they need blood. They can tolerate going out in the sun. Let's see about setting. Is this set in present day? Most likely. All right, so let's say that it's pretty fuzzy, like every town kind of
ish.
Thing. Like it's present-ish, but we aren't exactly sure. Maybe like a place that seems a little backward, like a rural community. I don't mean backward in a negative sense. I just mean like one of those places where things aren't changed, like they're not on the cutting edge, and so like any time in the last 10 years.
They don't have a Facebook yet.
Yeah. Okay, so probably a rural community. They look like they're alive. They can go out in the sun. So far, we're getting kind of a, pod people sort of feel like these vampires are very.
Do they have alien overlords?
Do they have? Okay, that's very specific.
Good to know.
Maybe.
Dun dun dun.
Here's an idea. With part of vampirism, you get voices. Someone is trying to get you to do something. There's some message coming to you, but they don't know where it is coming from. So some of them think aliens. Maybe we could make this a story actually where the vampires, some of them, like it's a debate about where this condition came from. And some of them are like UFO types. And maybe they have like a sense that there's an impending thing going to happen, and that's why they started to crop up. But it's not clear, like some are religious, some are,
Do some blame the government?
No idea.
Fair enough, 8 Ball.
Here's an idea. What if the number of vampires that have emerged in this community is unclear because many of them are keeping it a secret? So the player characters are ones who've kind of discovered each other, but many of them are, because it's so easy to hide with this strain, are keeping it on the down low. And so it's like maybe some of the ones who think that they're being watched or being experimented upon just aren't coming forward with it and aren't revealing it to the others, who have like sort of, I don't want to say they've gone public, but maybe they're sort of like reaching out to other people in the community.
They have a tentative support structure.
Yeah. Let's see. Another question.
Do they have fangs for feeding?
Yep.
Ooh.
And that is what it says, with like 4 E's. They do have fangs. So are these fangs, can they hide these fangs? Can they conceal them? Most likely. Maybe they have slightly pronounced canines, but then they kind of like get longer. So they can maybe be identified if you know what you're looking for. Do they have any outside enemy other than other vampires? No. So this is the conflict is purely vampire versus vampire, which is an interesting way to cast it. So what we could do is say they don't know what's given this condition to them. They suspect that there could be some shadowy antagonist, but the actual conflict at the table is vampire versus vampire. It's different people in this rural community, which maybe we could have be like a very large area, so that you have, despite the fact that you've got a relatively low population, it's sort of like a county or something where this is starting to happen.
Vast spaces.
Yeah. and they're starting to like reach out to each other. It's kind of informal, and some of them are opposed to others of them because they have disagreements about what this means and what they should do.
Aliens. Joe, you're an idiot.
Yeah, and perhaps in terms of like feeding, which is another thing to ask about.
How much blood do they actually need? Is it lots?
No.
Not lots of blood.
Don't need very much blood. So what we could do here, because the thing about feed is that, I mean, feeding doesn't always have to be bad, but it always has to be something of a sacrifice. So what we could do here is say that we could adjust the feeding rules so that feeding fully doesn't actually kill people. You needn't harm people if you're feeding on them.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe what we could do instead, so that you continue to be losing these traits, you could say that there's some other influence, like some reason why this is hard to do. Because, I mean, getting blood is just tough. So there's that aspect. Like, it doesn't really, you don't, in fact, not killing people.
What if it produces an enmity between the person? Like, you've got a small community, and even though you don't need very much blood from someone, if you take blood from someone, it's sort of like the idea of, like, the pariah or the mark of Cain or whatever. Like, it creates this antagonism between the two of you that you can't abide each other. It's like, instead of having the regular support that you, or at least tolerance that you have in a community, it creates this instant friction or repulsion.
That's interesting.
Just a notion.
Well, what about, because I've used a nice similar idea to that with the Nod strain. So what if we say that the transmission is really out of control? Maybe the transmission has a high probability, and so you don't need much blood, but it has a high chance of spreading.
The transmission risk is very high.
This would tend to lead to a game that could burn out. Like, this community could be in serious danger, and this could spread really badly.
Everyone might abandon the farm.
Well, and not just one farm, but like this whole area, because of the population and the fact, I mean, if you've got to feed constantly, and eventually everyone's going to be a vampire, and you're going to have to spread out. So this is a potential disaster in the making. Other things about the setting or the strain. Oh, about powers, about vampiric powers. Are these high-powered superhuman type vampires, or do they have mostly human abilities? So we'll phrase that as
superhuman
abilities.
Are
they superhuman? It looks that way. Maybe this looks is kind of interesting when we get these kind of answers. Maybe they appear to be more powerful than they are. Maybe it's sort of like a parlor trick thing, and that would be interesting because the vampires are very much kind of against each other. Maybe they have substantial weaknesses and their strengths aren't really as great as they appear.
But they have illusions.
So they're very scary. You know, they're frightening to look at. They have some just simple tricks, basically. So like maybe they can, get through locked doors in some way. Like they're very quiet when they walk. Maybe they have, some special ability to hide or whatever.
Ooh, are they vulnerable to holy water?
No.
Okay.
They are not. Yeah. Other potential vulnerabilities for them.
Iron, salt, sanctified objects. Of holy water isn't sanctified objects, shouldn't be. Running water, vials of tiny seeds.
Do they have some kind of mental obsession or something that can be taken care of? Most likely. Perhaps. Maybe what if these voices are actually kind of are driving them crazy? Like,
oh, they are being driven mad.
Yeah, once they're affected by this, and maybe the voices are becoming more insistent. You could use the compulsion rules for this and make it a little broader than it usually is. So it wouldn't just be vampiric nature. It would be like the GM is just giving you, and the other players too. Like, actually, this would be fun. Each player would come up secretly and working with the GM with like, what does this voice want? What is it roughly? But then the GM and that player would be the only people at the table who know that, and then you would be the voices of one specific other player, and your goal is to make certain things happen, bring about certain things in the community, in this rural community. But the voice wouldn't be totally upfront about it. It would be trying to like pull the strings and bring individual events together to make that event happen. So basically, these voices that are in all player characters' heads are trying to bring together some future.
Some grim future.
Yeah, our time is up. But yeah, so you're like, there's this force in you telling you to do things, trying to compel you to do things.
And you need blood now.
And sometimes you give in, especially when you don't have the blood you need. The condition is spreading, so it's like, what is going on here?
What's going to happen to the crops?
And the vampires are the only ones who know about it because they're keeping the secret, right? So they're the ones in charge of making sure other vampires don't spread too far. So you have all these great different sects and stuff.
This could be fun.
Yeah, very paranoid kind of conspiracy. I imagine this, like out on the farm, playing characters who are rural types, trying to like deal with their community problem without outing themselves.
And the voices in their heads, playing the voices in each other's heads. That could be fun.
Yeah, and it's like we're hearing something. This is going somewhere, but we don't know where it is. So great. Yes, that is it. Thank you, Magic 8 Ball.